Hello, hi. I want to thank all of you for being here. All of you are here wanting to know more about social and emotional development, what to expect, how to respond. Let me give you a brief introduction about myself. My name is Amrita Rajpal. I've been teaching for 22 years, but I've been learning all my life. And that's why I have this company called Edu Learn Grow. So I'm also a sports nutritionist. I'm an avid traveler. I'm an active Rotarian. I'm the territory head of the Early Childhood Association, Mumbai, and I'm founder of EduLearn Grow. And I'm also the co-founder of the ABCD show. So now we'll get on to our topic. Our topic is the stages of social and emotional development. What to expect, how to respond. So, what do we really want for our children? Let's think about this. We want our children to be successful. We want our children to be happy. We want our children to be joyful. We also want our children to have this well rounded personality. They have to have some independent thought. They should be able to make the right decisions. They should show initiative. So, there are so many things as parents that we're looking for in our children. And for most parents, the happiest thing that can happen to them is to have their children growing up to be all this. But we don't know how they will grow up. So let's sort of understand how children develop and what can we do in that understanding. So I'm going to start off with some simple facts of rediscovering your child with you. So, have all of you seen a Ferrari car? You all must have seen it in pictures or in movies if you have not seen it really. Now, this car is known for its speed, it's known for its technological advancement, it's known for its advanced mechanisms. So, if you're going to be looking at this car, this is a driver's delight because it has everything possible. It's got exemplary technology over there which makes a car move the fastest and has great speed and everything. Now when we are looking at a baby's finger, one finger, we're looking at that structure. Now this structure of this one finger is more complex than the structure of that car. And we are talking about a machine which is, the mechanism is very complicated. So this is more complicated than that. So can you imagine how this structure is, how much the performance of having one finger is compared to that of a car? And now I'm going to look at, equate a mobile phone. So all of us have a mobile phone and we know the uses of a mobile phone. If you take a smartphone, you have Google Maps, you have tens and thousands of emails that you can see. You can see messages, you can do shopping, you can do so many things on a mobile phone. And now you look at your baby's brain. Your baby's brain has a million brain cells. So I'm not saying 1 million, I'm saying million. So your baby's one brain cell is more intelligent than that of the smartest mobile phone that you've seen. So I want you to really get that what we are talking about over here when we're talking about your child, we are not talking about a child that is an ordinary human being or just something ordinary. What we're talking about is something which is so complex. We're talking about something which is a miracle. And this miracle is our responsibility right now. So can you just imagine that we have the responsibility to make this miracle grow up to be the best kind of human being he or she can ever be? And for that, we need to really understand how this miracle of creation develops. So I've taken this theory of psychosocial development, and it's made by Erik Erikson. Erik Erikson was a developmental psychologist, and he specialized in child psychoanalysis. And his stages of psychosocial development are very, very popular. And they're very applicable even today to what he says. So he said a person's life is divided into 8 stages. However, for this workshop, we're only going to be looking at 3 stages. That is because those are the stages that fall into our target age group. And he said that every stage has 2 opposing, conflicting concepts. Alright? So, for instance, there is a stage from 0 to 1 years, and that is the stage of trust versus mistrust. So, a person will develop either trusting people or mistrusting people. So, a child's foundation in this is being built. Now, you're going to be saying that there are people who are elders also, and people like you and me who also mistrust people. So, yeah, this is something which is there all your life, but at this stage, this challenge is most potent, and it sets the foundation for your later years. So, if a person doesn't overcome this challenge, let's assume that a person starts mistrusting at this challenge or starts trusting at this challenge. The person will still progress on to the next challenge and on to the next stage. But the foundation of this will also go with him, along with him, to the next stage. So this conflict will remain with the child lifelong. So it's very, very important for us to look at this development stage, to see what is it in this stage that we can do, what is it that we can inculcate a firm foundation for our child, to get this ready. So now let's look at the first stage. So the first stage is the 0 to 1 years, and that is called the trust versus mistrust stage. Here there can be 2 outcomes. Either the child trusts or the child mistrusts. Alright? Now trust has 2 parts. There is an external trust for the child and there is an internal trust. What is an external trust? An external trust is outside of the child. So I know that I am going to be taken care of. I know that there are going to be caregivers who love me and who are going to take care of my well-being, who are going to be there for me when I need them. I'm going to have consistency of care, and I am well looked after. And this is all being done outside of me by someone else. So, this is my external belief. And there's an internal belief. And that internal belief is I also can do something to effect a change or to cope with whatever circumstances that I have. Now, how will I do that? If I'm a baby, I will gurgle, I will smile, I will laugh, I will, make gestures, and I will be able to engage with adults. So, I'm not looking at maybe a newborn, but even a newborn will cry because they have a need to be changed, or they're hungry. So that is also something where I can evoke a change, because I can cry, I can do something, and then someone else will respond and take care of me. So I have some ability, and I also have faith in someone outside to be able to do this for me. So these are the 2 aspects of trust. So suppose these needs of this child of being trusted or trusting are not met, then they lose trust in themselves or in the world around them. So, many times when a baby is crying, either the mother feels or the caregiver, or sometimes elders in the family also say, the baby is whimpering, don't touch, let it be, the baby will be all right. And if you ignore, sometimes they just go off to sleep. So nobody goes to the baby. But now what is happening in the mind of the baby? That baby is thinking that here I am, trying to call somebody and I'm trying to, I have a need to have someone take care of me. No one is responding. Can I trust this world to take care of me? Can I trust that someone is there for me? And then that baby starts crying louder. And then the baby starts crying louder. And then you have somebody going running and picking up. Now, what does this baby think? This baby thinks, you know what? I have to scream to be heard because nobody really cares. These people will care for me if I really make myself, if I shout and I make myself, they know that I am around. This also grows up to be a habit where children actually need to shout, scream, throw a tantrum to be heard. Because this is what has been established right from the beginning. That if I speak or if I whimper, I may not get attention. But I need to make myself heard to get attention. So here is a whole foundation being built for your future. That I can't trust people to just come because I'm calling them or I need them. I need to voice it out. So it's very, very important that when you're going to a child and when you're looking after a child, you need to be there, available to tell the child, no, I'm here for you. And especially in this whole first year, it's very, very important that you are there with the child. So Erikson said, there are two parts to this. There are two things that really can help. When a mother is holding that child and is feeding that child, actually holding the child and being there with the child, and hugging the child, holding, caressing, petting. So the child understands that he is loved. And the child understands, I can trust people. I know that they are there, they're caring for me. Letting that. Another thing is responding right away when there is a cry of distress. So if the child is whimpering, go and just put your hand on that baby's stomach or on that baby's chest. And that baby will feel, oh, okay, somebody is just hearing me, even if I have to whimper. So this is what you can do. Another thing that is happening to this child is from that stage of 0 to 1, the child is actually looking at you because this whole world revolves around you, revolves around the caregivers. There's not so much else in the world that the child will understand. So this whole caregiver over there is something which is paramount for the child. And this child is looking at you. So it's very, very important that you express yourself with your child. That's why they say sing to your child, smile with your child, talk to your child, show your child different expressions. Let them realize that you're responding to them. You'll see little babies and they'll laugh and then they'll look at you and they'll wait for you to laugh. And then when you laugh or you say some sound when they say something. So it's, a call and response kind of thing. And they know, oh, they're engaging with you. So at some level, they can't even speak. But they're able to engage with you. So that is very, very important to be done. Now, if at this stage, this child builds up this trust, then what happens is that the child is ready with the next stage with being able to trust people and to go on, ready to take on the challenge of the next stage. And if this child doesn't build on trust and is mistrustful, he is going to be taking this feeling of mistrust to the next stage. So let's look at what is this next stage. This next stage is autonomy versus shame and doubt. So before we talk about autonomy versus shame and doubt, we have to understand what is this child now. He's 2 years old. So 2 years old, this child has developed physically quite well, right? He can walk, he can move around, he's quite independent. After that, this child has some control over his language, over his communication. He can do a lot more than what he could do earlier. he can express himself, he can ask for things, he can communicate. Another thing which is happening right now is this child is understanding I have an identity. I am different from people around me. I have a choice. I like certain things, I dislike certain things. So now you're going to see they're the terrible twos, and they're called the terrible twos for a reason, because they're also the tantrum twos. They realize, now I don't like this, now I like this, now I have to make sure that people understand this is what I like and this is what I don't like, and let me say what I have to do or what I want to express. So the meaning of autonomy is independence. Once you realize you have an identity, then you want to exert that identity. You want to exert that independence. No, you want to say that, yes, I have this liking, I don't like this food, I like this food, I don't like these clothes, these are too tight, or I don't like, or I like these clothes, I like this song, I don't like that, I don't like to read with this book, I want to read that book, I want to hear that story. So children have now decided what they like, what they don't like, and they are there to be able to say and communicate. So now if they do not get these opportunities to exert their influence and to exert their expression, then they're going to start doubting their ability. So have you seen these little children, wanting to wear on their own buttons, they want to carry their own glass, they want to eat themselves, they want to even wear on their jackets or their shoes or whatever, everything, I want to do it. This is the stage they're at. They want to do everything themselves because now they've realized that I have the ability to do it. Till now I was dependent and I couldn't do so many things, but now I can do so much, so let me do it. Now you're going to see another thing that is happening. Sometimes they want to do everything, sometimes they want you to do everything for them. So you're also wondering that yesterday he wanted to wear on all his clothes himself, now he refuses to wear on anything and he wants you to make him wear on everything. So what should I do? But you have to understand the stage they are at. They are at an oscillating stage. They're finding their identity, but they also want to be loved. They also want people to care for them. And one way of showing that you care for them is that you are available to do things for them. So be with it. Allow them to do things and also do things for them. Give them little choices. Do you want to wear this shirt or do you want to wear this t-shirt? Or do you want to wear this dress or this dress? So once you give them too many choices, then they're confused. Then they don't know what to do. Start giving them little choices so that they understand. I've heard a lot of parents doing this. They ask the child, what will you eat? Then the child, and I'm guilty of being one of those parents also. So that child will say, I want to eat pav bhaji. And then I'll say, oh, there's no pav bhaji masala at home. So tell me something else. Then they'll say, I want to eat curd rice. Then I'll say, okay, but I don't think I have so much curd. Now, if I don't have those things, then why am I asking you what? Why don't you tell the child, will you eat curd rice or will you eat paratha? So now the child has a choice, can make his choice. He has an autonomous, independent decision that he can make, that yes, I have this choice and this is what I can do and I can say, instead of asking him what and then you saying that you're not going to do it. So you're creating confusion in the mind of a child. This child wants to exert autonomy. This child wants to be able to do his own thing. You have to allow them those choices. Allow that child to be picking up his own things. Allow that child to do little things by himself. Also that you can also do things for him. I want to tell you about one incident of. I had already mentioned that I travel a lot. So I was on a trip to a European country, and there I saw this child wanting to eat an ice cream. Now, the ice cream cone was quite big, and the mother brought one and gave it to the child. The child is 2 years old, and I was just wondering, will this child be able to eat an ice cream? And ice cream drips, and how fast can a 2-year-old eat? But the mother was very patient. She just stood there. She allowed the child to eat. A lot was dripping, and the mother just kept wiping it with a tissue, kept wiping with a tissue, and allowed that child. And I was thinking, would I have done that as a mother? I would not have done that. And I'm sure there will be many mothers who will resonate with me. I would have given that child 1-2 bites and then held the cone, and I would have made sure it didn't drip, it would have been clean, and the child didn't have this mess. But that mother allowed that child. Now that child is autonomous, it's independent. The child is also realizing that there is a mess, and then automatically the child gave back after eating whatever the child wanted and surely created a mess. But the mother patiently allowed that child instead of not allowing the child. So here, if the child wants to carry some glasses and go, know that the child is not going to be able to carry. Instead of saying no, it would be nice to give them a plastic plate or something. Can you keep this first? Can you put this on a tray and take it first? So the child at least has some feeling that, yes, I've done it. Otherwise, they start doubting themselves that I'm not capable. I can't do anything. My parents have to do everything for me. Or my family members or caregivers have to do everything for me. They don't trust themselves to make decisions. They don't trust themselves to do tasks independently. They're constantly looking for help. Now, when these children grow up, when the teacher is giving some instruction, they want to ask their friend also that what the teacher said was this. I want to reconfirm. Why are you always reconfirming? Because you don't even trust yourself to listen and to do what is there. Because you have not created confidence in yourself. So either you feel ashamed that I'm incapable of myself, or you start doubting your abilities if you're not given this opportunity to do things on your own, to make little choices. I'm not saying give the child every choice, that do everything you want. Give little choices. Yes, that I can do this much, and allow me to do this. So that is it. So here we are building the confidence of a child. We're building, a child's ability to know his own strengths and to build on that. Also acknowledging the child over there. That now I acknowledge you for all these things that you are doing. And taking baby steps and allowing that child to grow. We'll go on to the third stage. So the third stage is from 4 to 5 years old. Now the child is a big boy or girl. So here the child will take initiative versus guilt. These are the two conflicting things that are happening. There's either an initiative being taken, or if that initiative is not happening, then the child feels guilt. So now you're going to say this is so much better, this stage, because the child has become so much bigger. The child also at this point has learned to control his bladder and is more or less potty trained. 4 to 5 years old is somewhere where the child has control over his whole body and is also able to express, is able to physically do quite a few things. Now this child's need is a sense of purpose, is a sense of taking initiative. So the child wants to take initiative. So what does a child do to take initiative? Before I ask you what does a child do, let me give you an example of my own child. So, my son Pranav, when he was small, one day his grandmother was not feeling too well, and he was around 4 years. And she told him, Pranav, can you hold my hand and take me up the steps? So her bedroom was on the first floor, and we were on the ground floor. So Pranav held her hand and took her up, and had this whole sense of achievement that I am taking care of my dadi and taking her up to her room. Because this is something that I can do and I'm initiating it. Now this became a routine. Every day he would take her up at 8 o'clock to her room and leave her over there. And we didn't realize how much it meant to him. But one day I had taken him out for dinner, and it was about 8:15 or 8:30, and we were still over there. And Pranav asked me, Mummy, what is the time? And I said, it's 8:30. Why? What happened? We'll go home in a bit. And he said, no, but how will Dadi go up? I said, but Pranav, there are so many people. Someone will take her up. And he threw such a tantrum, and he was so disturbed because he felt that it was his duty, and he was so guilty, that he had not done his duty. But this is the basis of responsibilities. This is the basis of building on initiative to do things. Because now they are at this stage, they want to do things. They want to take people up. They want to do something which is purposeful, which has a meaning, and that has a great meaning for them. Now here as parents, we should give them those things, and we should not feel that, for me at that time it was like, what is such a big deal which is being made about this, that taking up, someone will take up. For him it was very, very purposeful, that this is what I'm supposed to be doing and I should be doing. And his life is going to start unfolding like that this is what I should be doing. These are my goals. This is what is there for me to do. So he's sort of creating a sense of responsibilities, also a sense of empathy, compassion. All these things can be built. And they feel very, very guilty if they don't have a sense of purpose. Now as parents, what can we do? We can give them some things like setting a table or taking on some responsibility. We also have to understand they're 4 to 5. They have a childhood. So they cannot take big responsibilities, but small responsibilities which have meaning for them. And especially if they're doing something for somebody, it gives them a lot of, good feeling about themselves, that I am doing something really nice. So something purposeful for them to do. If they're going to school and you're a teacher watching, have them rub the blackboard, pick up books from other children, ring the bell, or help the teacher put back something which makes them feel I'm important, I have a purpose, and I'm doing something. So this was this third stage. I also want to explain to you something about the brain. We need to understand how does this brain function. So let's assume that our brain is divided into 3 parts. We have a primitive brain, which is the first brain which develops. That is just a survival brain, basically. Now that brain always asks one question: am I safe? That's what that brain wants to know. Then after that, we have an emotional brain. So our emotional brain, which is there, that emotional brain is all about connections. And that brain keeps asking only one more question: am I loved? Is this a safe place? Am I wanted? Am I feeling comfortable in this surrounding? So that is that brain. And then we have a thinking brain, which is our executive brain. Now this thinking brain asks only one question: what can I learn from you? So this is in charge of learning. At the entry point to all these brains, there is a security guard. Just like we have a security guard in our building, so we have a security guard over here. And this security guard over here is telling the brain, giving a signal. So if someone comes to meet you at your house, what do? Your security guard will call you and say, so and so has come, should I let this person in? So this is what the amygdala is doing. So it's sending a signal to the brains. So now when it comes to, first comes to the emotional brain. And the emotional brain first understands where should it go. Am I feeling good about this? Or am I feeling bad? If it is threatening, then the emotional brain sends it to the primitive brain. How do you think a primitive brain reacts? In a primitive manner, right? Anger, tantrums. So there are three ways of this primitive brain reacting. There's a fight, flight and freeze. So if you fight, what do? You start throwing tantrums, you get angry, you scream, you shout, you yell. So here the child throws a tantrum. If there's a flight, so either the child will run away from there or the child will mentally run away. So either there's a physical running away or there's a mental running away. Have you seen that movie Tare Zameen Par? So here this teacher is talking and shouting and talking so badly to this child. Then the child is zoned out. There's nothing that this child can understand at all because he is in a flight mode. So physically he's standing in front of his teacher, but he's not mentally there at all. And then there is a freeze mode. So that freeze mode is, what if you're walking on a road and a car comes? Sometimes it's just so confused, you don't know what to do. Are you supposed to run? Are you supposed to stay? And you freeze because the brain stops. So this is the way the brain reacts. It's a fight, flight or freeze if it goes there. If the emotional brain says, no, this is something which is really making me feel good, then it goes straight to the executive brain. And then the executive brain says, let me understand what is happening. And let me see, this seems interesting. What can I learn from this? And the child goes into a understanding mode. So for you, in all these stages, you have to first get the emotions happening. So once these emotions are in place, the child feels good about himself. Then this child is going to be able to, go ahead and learn things, become intelligent, and all the things that we were talking about earlier. We want our children to be joyous, we want them to be happy, we want them to be successful, making decisions, all those things. Yes. So I'm so happy that all of you are here. I'm just waiting for all the questions. So let me see, the chat is there. Are there any questions that I can see here? Okay, I got a lot of questions coming on my phone from First Cry. So Amrita Mahajan says, my daughter is 1 year and 7 months old and she's becoming very, very fussy intentionally and she doesn't respond when we call. She either just does, she either just does whatever she's doing or she can just look and turn back. How to deal with her? So Amrita, my namesake, so I want you to understand what stage your child is at. Your child is in between the trust and mistrust stage and also the autonomous stage. Now what is an autonomy stage? That is the independence of what I want to do, right? And I want to do everything on my own. So if your child wants to do everything on your own, she wants a choice. I also want you to understand at this point that if you are busy doing something and I tell you leave everything and come right now, how would it be for you? You may not want to be leaving whatever and coming right now, no? So what you can do is give that child a little warning earlier and tell the child, in 5 minutes we're going to be eating dinner, or in 10 minutes we're going to be eating dinner. You have time to play for 10 minutes. So your child is expecting 10 minutes of playing, Then after 5 minutes you can rewind. I hope you have started packing up, and now I want you to get ready. And then after that, come over there. You can even sit with the child for a few minutes and say, what are you playing? Why are you playing with this? Is this happening? Once I realize you're so interested, and let's come back after dinner or whatever and then do this. So I think understanding why the child is not responding is very important, rather than sort of understanding what is it that, instead of actually understanding why is he not responding, rather than he or she is not responding. Okay, I hope that was good for you, Amrita. um, Meenal. So, touch wood, my 2.5-year-old understands responses and even conveys her feelings. Only thing I'm not able to rule out is anything when said no to her being done by her in a very natural manner, and also sometimes by hiding herself. I mean, trying conveying to. I'm not understanding this question so much, Meenal, but what I am getting is your child is able to communicate well enough right now, but your child doesn't like to be said no to. But none of us like being said no to. No, there are boundaries that we have to have. See, if you say no to everything, then the child doesn't like it. But if you say no to something which is important, really choose your battle and fight. Your child is in an autonomous stage, wants to do everything himself. So if your child says, I want to carry this whole tray of glasses, or glass bowls, and you will say no. But what you can do is give something else to make the child feel that sense of achievement. So I think basically that is what you need to do, is don't say no initially. Give something else, give another alternative, and then get your child to do that. All right. Manjari over here is saying, my 2-year-old has lots of tantrums and how to handle them, please. Manjari, 2 years is known as the terrible twos and the tantrum twos. So the child is just getting an identity. This child is starting to feel, now I'm a different individual. I am not like that person and like that person. I have an identity, and I have likes, I have dislikes. See, this is a point where you can build your trust on the child. Relate to your child and sit over there and understand what is this root cause. Why is my child throwing a tantrum? What is it that my child really wants? Now, I want to give this example. There was this child in one of the schools where, I was doing a quality audit, and there was a role play which was happening. And this child was a doctor. She was role playing being a doctor, and she had that artificial stethoscope, and she had a baby doll. And I was just watching how she was playing, observing over there, and this child was taking that doll and she was going to burn the doll on the stove. And so I just casually asked, so what are you doing? Is this an operation happening? What is happening? Because the child is 2.5. You're wondering, what does this child know? I said, no, I am burning this doll because I don't want the patient. We found out later that the child's mother was a doctor, and the child's mother always used to leave the child to go and meet the patients. So she didn't want them to have any patients, so that the mother would be with her. So you need to understand, why is this child crying? What is it does this child want? Does this child want me? Does this child want to be loved? Does this child want something? And it's very important you set your boundaries also, that this is what you can do and this is what you cannot do. But I also want you to be reasonable within the boundaries. Everything cannot be, allowed. So let me see. So my child is Amrita Prashant. Oh, I have a lot of Amritas asking me questions. All right. My child is 2 years and 9 months. He knows how to hold crayons, but he doesn't color if asked, and not even trying. Also, he never listens to anyone. He does only things that he likes to. I always try to make him understand gently, but it's of no use. So, when you're talking about crayons or you're talking about tools, uh, a child is understanding. Many times a child has had a bad experience, so you need to understand the experience of the child and know why is this child not wanting to touch those crayons. uh, there are these whole stages of handwriting readiness for you to understand that a person needs to know how to write, and there are various other things to make these fingers strong, to make them flexible, to make them agile. Do you know that we have 30 muscles in this hand, and these 30 muscles have to know how to manipulate and flex and move to be able to write. Now, if this child feels that you're giving him this crayon to be able to write or to do, maybe that's what he's resisting. I don't know, but maybe that is something you can explore. So before that, give the child dough. If the child thinks that the child will play with and get their fingers strong. So once his fingers are strong and he's able to have a grip, your nuts and bolts, just opening and closing, so manipulating your fingers will do that. Another thing you can do is actually you do and play with the crayons yourself. Once he sees that you are having fun, he may want to come and do it. And don't set expectations that I want you to have this whole thing and I want you to be able to perform or make this. So there should not be an outcome attached to that. It should be fun, and once it's fun, then it's a good experience. Okay. Um, so Krupa Bittu says, my daughter's 2 years, 3 months. She never eats food properly. She also cries a lot. She plays more and more in water always. She never plays with the toys. She was talking slowly, but she's not spelling education or alphabets. Now, I cannot comment so much, Krupa, on why your child is doing this. But they're at the sensory motor stage right now. So children from 0 to 2 years, according to the cognitive development, they're at a sensory motor stage. So sensory motor stage is learning through their senses and learning by moving about. So very important for you to give them sensorial experiences. Your child is enjoying water, your child will enjoy sand, your child will enjoy rice. So if your child doesn't identify letters of the alphabet, you can just take this rice and get a card and then, sit and make letters or draw in rice or in, dals or whatever, or give this gloop or give, maida paste, because the child is enjoying all those things. So once the child is a little calm and is enjoying something, then that child will be able to do other things. So, yeah. So, S. Mahajan has written, I have twin boys and girls and they will be 2 in July. Due to this pandemic, we have not been able to take them out. What kind of activities can we do for their development? And is watching rhymes and kids songs on TV safe for kids? They don't eat food without mobiles in airplane mode. Yes. So, I understand. This is not something that, this is really not something that is an isolated case. This is everybody's case. Everybody is facing this issue. But when you're letting a child watch TV for endless amount of time, and this child is constantly watching TV mindlessly without an interaction, then the TV is not a good thing. So if you're looking at the rhymes and you are also doing the actions with the rhymes, so you're doing that roly poly, or you're making those expressions with the child and encouraging that child to interact with you with the rhymes, then it is amazing. But if you are just going to have that child just constantly just look at something and it's only a visual stimulation, then what happens is the brain zones out. So why don't you play some games at home? Even if you pile up your cushions and have your children, jump over the cushions up and down, or take the cushion and say, put it over your head, put it under your thing, keep it on the other side, or do a treasure hunt in your house. Then there are so many things. You can have a routine for the day. You have an art time at one slot, you have a music and movement time. See, these children can't go out. There is obviously a stress in their body. So there are two stresses. There's a good stress and a bad stress. The good stress is when there is an excitement happening. Then the body also gets a certain amount of stress, but there is something which is really good which is happening. And there is a bad stress. And the bad stress is something like, I'm bored, or I don't know what to do, or I want to be doing that and now I'm frustrated. So for you start creating those good stresses. Start making the day with a schedule, with some eventful happenings in the day, so your child feels good. Yeah. But there are lots of games that you can just sort of play, like your treasure hunt or your I Spy, or with cushions, with anything. Do role plays. Get them to make rotis for you, or play hotel, play restaurant. So there are various things that they can role play also. Yeah. I have a daughter of 3 years old and twins, Avina. I hardly manage time for my elder one, and she has become stubborn now because of my ignorance and eats lots of chocolates and chips fed by grandparents. How to manage? I really want to tell you something. Your child is looking for attention, and I understand so much that the twins, and you're 8 months old. So I think what you need to do is enroll your whole family. You need to have your they take on some risks for even the 8-month-old, because here this child is in this initiative versus this child is in this autonomy phase out here, and we in the initiative versus. We don't want that child feeling that I am not loved. So either have someone take over time with the baby and give some quality time. Also, every time you're doing something for the babies, you can always involve your baby, your child. Okay, sit with me, and while we do this, can you sing a rhyme also with me for the babies? Can you do this with me? Your mama's and your mama's best baby. Let's feel loved, because if this child is not going to feel loved, they are going to this child later, and you are also realizing it. Parents say stories to the child. They can have a great relationship which can be built up over there. And also you need to have your husband and truly understand. And having two twins at 8-3-year-old is full. Yes. You said your eats a lot of chocolates, chips. I think there are so many lovely books which tell you, what happens to someone who eats too much, and a stomach ache and things like that. So sometimes these indirect messages also are very nice. So, this happened to this person. I don't know if we want to have that happen to us. So instead of always saying no, make it like third person thing. Have a conversation. So Santu Vutkuri has said, we have a child 2 months old. I just wanted to know how better we can love him. So Santu, you know how to love your child, and your child will know if you love him. I think all of us know that where we are wanted, where we are not wanted. And I think children understand, they're very perceptive, just like how we are. We also are very perceptive. I think if you go to a party also, and you can feel the vibe of the person coming over there, and that person saying, I'm happy to have you here, and you can see it on their face, you can see it on their thing. So I think what's very important is give your child that whole trust that I am always there for you. This doesn't mean pampering the child, but this being telling the child I am available. No, when he whimpers, carry him, pat him, put him back down. Be available. And your child will know that this is a nice, trustworthy place. The world is a nice place with nice people. So, my daughter is 4 years old. Sia, hi. My daughter is 4 years old. She is very shy and she goes into hiding when some person comes to our place, or if we meet someone, she hides her face and she's not ready to face people socially. What should I do? So, there are two things involved with people, with all people, not children per se. So, there is something which we are inherently, inherent nature. So, some people are basically shy, and some people are basically exuberant and extrovert. And we also have something called circumstance. So, there is this whole outside atmosphere which is there, which is contributing to this. So if your child naturally is a shy child, the first thing the child needs to do is feel comfortable. So if the child is feeling comfortable, then the child will come out and speak. So you can always, just tell children it's very good manners that when someone comes, we have to say hello. So get your child just to say hello. That's also fine, because it's good manners to do that. And when people come to our house or when we go there, we have to greet people. So that is a natural norm. Allow that child to do that. I have seen people, and all of us are guilty. I can say even for me, that my child sings very well, please sing over here. Now this child may not want to be singing or whatever. So don't put that child in a spot. Just start with a hello. The child will start feeling comfortable with people. Also, we need to understand how children grow. Initially, children are just sort of understanding their own identity. They're egocentric. Egocentricism is everything begins and ends with me. I am the person. Life starts here and ends over here. If I like it, I like it. If you have it and I've decided I like it, then that is mine. So everything is about me. It has got to be nothing to do with anyone else. So they start only like that. Then after that, they start understanding that they can play next to another person, but they will not play with that person. So it's called parallel play. First we have solitary play, then we have parallel play. So you're playing there, I'm playing here, it's fine. You don't come into my space, I don't come into your space. I can come and take something from there, you can come and take something from here. That is it. Then you will start with group play. So your child has to be given all those stages of play. So if your child has missed any of those stages, then allow the child to go through that stage. Let the child just be comfortable, and then get that child involved in groups. So Chitrakshi says, my son is 3 years old. He is becoming very stubborn. So if he wants something, he will cry like hell to get it. Sometimes I also get angry with him, how to cope up with his demands to get anything at any cost. Chitrakshi, this reminds me of a joke. Alright? And I read this joke somewhere, and there was this lady, and her child had thrown this tantrum in a mall. And her baby was screaming, shouting, hitting herself, and lying down on the floor and doing everything. And this lady was standing there and saying, Devika, calm down. Devika, calm down. Devika, have patience. So there was a man who was watching them, and he came up to them and he told that lady, she's not hearing anything you're saying. I don't know why you're wasting your breath. She said, I'm not talking to her, I'm talking to myself. So I think this is what you need to do. That child is going through something. Why is your child behaving like that? Your child is behaving like this because you need to understand what is the root cause. And that root cause is something which is individual to every child. So I can give you an example about what happened in one of the schools where I was again doing a quality audit. This child was moving around and around. If he was sitting down, then the teacher told him, Rahul, sit down. He sat down. Then after some time, he is nudging someone. Sometimes he is doing something else. He said, stop doing that. He started doing something else. Stop doing that. Then he started doing something else. Then he started crying. Now the teacher looked into it. Why is this child behaving like this? And then she understood that that child would go to the toilet. He had wet his diaper and he was uncomfortable. Now he can't sit. He wants to do something. He doesn't know how to express himself. So now he is moving around. Now when she's sitting over there, again he wants to express himself because he's uncomfortable. So he's doing some other thing. So actually he's not doing something for causing that attention, but he wants to go and change. And he is uncomfortable with his own body. So you need to understand, because children at this age are not able to express themselves so well. They are able to only sort of give some sort of indication of what they are in whatever way possible. So for us, we need to understand what is the root cause of this behavior. Why is this child behaving like this? And only then will this child understand. I think we are done with all the questions that I have. And it's been such a pleasure being over here. It's been so nice being with all of you. Thank you all so much for attending. I really acknowledge that you all are so interested in your children's lives, wanting them to become good, happy human beings. So I guess I really want to acknowledge all of you for all of this. And thank you so much for attending my session. Bye-bye.